I always thought fear would come with a bang, some loud crash, some blaring warning siren inside my head. But it didn't. When real fear found me, it arrived on the soft hush of worn tires rolling over a crumbling road, under a sky smothered by clouds so low they seemed almost heavy enough to crush the hills around me. My name is Caleb Hensley, and I was 29 when I accepted the job that changed my life, or maybe ended it. I still don't know which. I was a traveling electrician, working for rural power companies that sent me into places most people forgot existed. Trailer parks clinging to the edges of dried up lakes, mining towns with a single bar and a half-collapsed church. I thought I'd seen it all. Then came Black Ridge. I first heard the name from Jim, the foreman, who dropped a yellowed paper map on my desk at the depot. GPS won't pick it up, he said, scratching his beard like he was second-guessing the assignment himself. But the breakers there are ancient. Need someone to check 'em. I frowned. No satellite image. Nope. No phone service. Dead zone. The way he said it, dead zone, lingered longer than it should have. Still, I needed the money. My truck was a gas-guzzling beast, and I hadn't made a good paycheck in months. So I shrugged, stuffed the map into my glove box, and hit the road the next morning. The first hour was uneventful. Paved highways wound through sleepy hills, dotted with cows and rusted farmhouses. I listened to a true crime podcast, drumming my fingers on the steering wheel, half distracted, half bored. Then the asphalt cracked and faded to concrete. Another 20 minutes, and the concrete crumbled into gravel. Finally, gravel gave way to dirt, a thin, uneven strip twisting through thickening trees. My GPS had long since glitched out, frozen on a blank stretch of green. No road names. No destination. Just nothing. The only clue that I was close came when I spotted a weathered wooden sign, barely hanging onto a crooked post. Welcome to Black Ridge. The paint was peeling. Someone or something had carved deep gashes across the letters. I slowed down instinctively. My tires crunched loudly in the sudden silence. There were no cars. No people. No animals. Only sagging houses, gray wood, broken windows, leaning dangerously like drunks about to topple. I crept forward, passing what must have once been a general store. Its windows were boarded from the inside. A rocking chair sat abandoned on the porch, swaying slightly though there was no wind. I remember muttering aloud, trying to fill the suffocating quiet. How the hell do people even live out here? But no answer came. Just the sound of my own voice fading into the heavy air. The house I was assigned to was at the very end of the trail, a one-story cottage that looked more like a prop from a haunted house ride than a real home. The front door was cracked open. Not wide, just a few inches. Enough to feel wrong. I parked my truck on the overgrown grass and grabbed my toolbox. As I stepped onto the porch, the boards groaned under my weight, sharp and brittle as dry bones. I knocked. Hello. Electric company. Here to check the panel. Nothing. I called again, louder. Still nothing. The air inside smelled musty, thick like damp cloth and rot. Against every better instinct I had, I pushed the door open and stepped inside. Dust coated everything. Tables. Chairs. Picture frames. Even the sink was lined with a fine gray layer, untouched for what looked like years. But the fridge was humming. A low, steady buzz of electricity incongruous in the heavy, dead stillness of the house. It was running. Someone or something had kept it plugged in. My boots left clean prints across the floor as I walked toward the back hallway where the breaker box was supposed to be. I tapped on walls, called out, but no answer ever came back. No TVs. No radios. No sign of life at all. Except, every now and then, I heard it. Faint. A shuffling, like footsteps overhead. But there was no attic. I had checked. Still, I worked fast. I wanted out of there. The breaker box had been tampered with, labels scratched off, switches half-tripped in ways that didn't make any technical sense. I snapped a few photos with my phone, even though it was stuck on airplane mode. One picture, in particular, caught my eye later, though not because of what I aimed the camera at. It was the reflection in the microwave door behind me. A figure. Standing in the hallway. Too far back to notice when I took the photo, but unmistakably there. My stomach dropped. I spun around, heart slamming in my chest. Nothing. No movement. Just the kitchen window rattling softly from a wind I couldn't feel. I didn't waste another second. I packed my tools, grabbed my things, and made for the door. Outside, everything was different. The gravel trail I had driven down was gone. Gone. In its place, thick forest. Endless. Tangled. Swallowing the landscape in every direction. I staggered off the porch, scanning the tree line, convinced my mind was playing tricks on me. I walked around to where I had parked my truck. It wasn't there. No tire tracks. No sign it had ever been. My hands trembled as I pulled out my phone, still no signal. Worse, the battery was draining fast, the screen dimming by the second. Something was wrong. Not just wrong, unnatural. I started pacing the clearing, heart hammering, searching for any landmark, any break in the wall of trees. That's when I saw it. A barn. Not old and decrepit like the rest of the village, no, this thing looked almost new, standing in the woods just beyond the edge of the clearing. I swear it hadn't been there before. But now, it was waiting for me. And I felt the sick pull of inevitability. Like gravity. Like fate. I had to see what was inside. I should have turned back. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to stay away from that barn, that place that hadn't been there before, yet now stood waiting as if it had always been part of the landscape. But I was past the point of reason. Something in the air, something deep in my bones, told me the road home depended on that barn. I crossed the clearing with slow, heavy steps, as if the earth itself was trying to anchor me, to hold me back. The closer I got, the clearer the structure became: sagging beams, a roof half collapsed on one side, two massive doors held together by a single, rusted chain that barely looped through the handles. I hesitated only once. One deep breath. Then I reached out and nudged the door. It creaked open with a sound like a dying animal. Inside, the air was colder, the smell sharper: mold, rust, and something else underneath, the coppery tang of blood, maybe. The first thing I saw were the tools. Axes. Sickles. Saws. All scattered across the dirt floor like offerings to something I couldn't see. I stepped in further, my boots crunching on debris. At the center of the barn was a table, old, worn, stained black by who knows what. Candles were melted into the wood, their wax hardened into pale rivers. Some still flickered faintly, though I hadn't seen anyone light them. But it was the walls that made me stop cold. Hundreds of Polaroid photos, nailed into the wooden planks with brutal precision. Faces. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Most were blurred or faded with age, but the expressions were unmistakable: fear. Eyes wide. Mouths open mid-scream. Hands raised as if to shield themselves. I moved closer despite myself, heart pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. The photographs varied: some were of men, women, even children. All strangers. All trapped in moments of sheer, frozen terror. Then I found it. The photo that didn't belong. It was me. Standing in the hallway of the abandoned house. Frozen in time, glancing over my shoulder just like the reflection I'd seen in the microwave. I stumbled back, knocking into the table, sending one of the candles rolling across the surface. Behind me, the floor creaked. I spun. fists clenched instinctively. No one was there. Only the slow groan of the barn settling into its rot. But something was watching. I could feel it. I bolted. Ran blindly into the trees, not caring about direction anymore, only distance from that place, from that photo, from whatever had captured me in that Polaroid without my knowing. The forest swallowed me quickly. Trees stretched impossibly high overhead, their skeletal branches blocking out what little light remained. I ran until my lungs burned, until the muscles in my legs screamed. Then, gasping, I stopped and realized the trees around me were wrong. The same twisted trunk to my left. The same fallen log at my feet. I had circled back. Or worse, I had never moved at all. I turned in a slow, panicked circle. Every direction looked the same. Endless. Silent. But not empty. I heard it then. Not footsteps this time. Breathing. Not mine. Slow, heavy, ragged. Somewhere close, too close. I refused to turn around. Instead, I closed my eyes and whispered to myself, over and over, like a prayer against madness. If I don't see it, it can't see me. If I don't see it, it can't see me. The breathing grew louder. I forced my legs to move. One step. Then another. The air grew thicker the further I went, like wading through syrup. My body ached, my mind reeled. It felt like I was walking underwater, every motion delayed, sluggish. Still. I pressed on. Until finally I saw it. Light. Not the natural, golden glow of the sun, but a harsh, yellow glare. Artificial. Man-made. I stumbled toward it with what little strength I had left. Branches tore at my clothes, at my skin, but I didn't care. I burst into the clearing and stopped dead. My heart plummeted. It was the house. The same house I had left hours ago. Same chipped porch. Same sagging windows. Same broken gutter hanging like a noose. A rusted-out van sat in the side yard now, a detail I knew hadn't been there before. It was like I had never left. Or worse. Like the house had moved with me. Like it was alive. Waiting. I didn't want to go back inside. Every fiber of my being screamed against it. But when I looked back at the forest, the thick, endless blackness, I knew the greater terror lay behind me. So, trembling, I approached the porch. The boards groaned underfoot, louder this time, almost wailing. The door swung open at my touch, as if welcoming me back. Inside, the house had changed. The hallway lights were on now, buzzing faintly overhead. And somewhere deeper in the house, humming. A soft, childlike tune, aimless, tuneless, yet somehow chilling. It drifted from the kitchen. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. But I couldn't. Something pulled me forward. I rounded the corner, the humming louder now, only to find the kitchen empty. Pitch black. Except for the microwave. Its door ajar. The faint green glow of the clock the only light in the room. I stepped closer, my reflection warping in the curved glass. And this time, I wasn't alone. A shadow stood beside me in the reflection, tall, featureless, wrong. I spun around, heart hammering so loud I thought it might burst from my chest. Nothing. Only silence. The humming had stopped. But something else had started. A whisper. Low. Urgent. From behind the door leading to the back porch. I didn't want to open it. God help me, I didn't. But my hand reached for the knob anyway. And when I yanked it open, expecting night air, cold grass, maybe a way out, I found myself standing inside the barn again. The barn swallowed me whole. No porch. No stars. No night breeze. Only the rotten stink of old wood, the flicker of candlelight, and the oppressive knowledge that the walls had shifted, closing in, boxing me like a trapped animal. The table was back in the center. The Polaroids. Hundreds more now, spreading like a disease across the boards. And in every single one, I saw myself. Frozen. Afraid. Screaming. Each photo captured a different angle, a different moment: me running through the woods, me gasping for breath, me standing in the barn. Somehow, they had been taken when no one else was there. When I thought I was alone. A fresh Polaroid dangled from a nail just above the table, still curling at the edges as the chemicals dried. I stepped closer, heart jackhammering against my ribs. It showed me standing right where I was now. Right here. Right now. I staggered back, bumping into the table, the candles flickering violently, casting monstrous shadows that danced and stretched across the walls. Then the whispering started. Dozens of voices, layered, cracked, wet. "Stay," they hissed. "Stay. Stay." I covered my ears, but it didn't help. The voices weren't outside. They were inside. Inside my mind. I bolted for the door. But when I yanked it open, the world beyond wasn't the clearing. It wasn't the forest. It wasn't even the world I remembered. It was endless. An endless sea of more barns. Hundreds, thousands, stretching to the horizon, each identical, each humming with that same low, dreadful vibration. Everywhere I looked, barns. No roads. No sky. No escape. I screamed. God help me, I screamed until my throat tore raw. But there was no answer. Only the sound of the door creaking shut behind me. I don't know how long I've been here. Time doesn't work right in Black Ridge. Sometimes I see glimpses, flashes of the life I left behind. Sunlight through my truck window. The taste of coffee. The feel of rain. But they're cruel dreams, gone before I can even cling to them. Mostly, I wander the barns. Each one a mirror of the last. Each one a tomb. Sometimes, I see other faces blurred, hollow-eyed, wandering between the barns. Other souls like me, trapped, broken, forgotten. We don't speak. We can't. Our voices are part of the walls now, part of the whispers that lure in the next poor soul who thinks they can find their way out. There is no way out. If you're hearing this, if somehow my words have reached you, please don't look for Black Ridge. Don't follow the paper map. Don't listen when the GPS glitches and flashes its name. Because if you do, if you even think about finding it, it's already too late. The road has already found you. And the barns are already waiting. Just like they waited for me. Forever. The first evening passed without incident, or at least, that's what I told myself at the time. We had dinner at a rough wooden table that groaned under the weight of old age and countless meals before it. Riley's grandmother served roasted chicken and mashed potatoes, moving slowly, as if each step required careful thought. The conversation was light, but stiff, like an old chair about to collapse. No one mentioned the well again. Still, I caught the way her grandfather's eyes flickered to the window whenever the wind picked up outside. As if he was checking. As if he was listening. After dinner, Riley and I retreated to the small guest room at the back of the house. The bed was lumpy, the air stale. A single small window looked out over the backyard directly facing the well. I tried to tell myself it was just an old family superstition. That night would be uneventful. I was wrong. It started sometime after midnight. I woke up with the heavy sensation that someone was standing over me. But when I opened my eyes, the room was empty, bathed only in the faint blue light of the moon. I sat up, heart hammering. Something outside the window caught my eye, a flicker of movement. Careful not to wake Riley, I slid out of bed and crept to the window, pressing my face close to the glass. At first, I saw nothing but the swaying grass. The well stood silent and still, its chained lid faintly shining under the moonlight. Then I saw it. The metal lid shifted not much, just an inch, and then settled back with a soft clink. The breath caught in my throat. No wind could move something that heavy. No animal could unlatch a chained lid. I stared, frozen, my fingertips numb against the window pane. The grass around the well trembled slightly, as if something beneath it was breathing. And for the first time, deep in the pit of my gut, I realized. The well wasn't sealed to keep people out. It was sealed to keep something in. The next morning, I tried to tell myself I had imagined it. A half-awake dream. A trick of light. But when I went outside under the rising sun, I saw the truth etched in steel. The lid bore fresh scratch marks, deep, jagged gouges that hadn't been there the day before. They ran across the rusted surface in long, desperate arcs. Like claws. I bent closer. The scratches weren't random. They formed crude, broken shapes almost like letters, but not in any language I knew. Something had tried to open the well. Something had wanted out. Riley's grandfather was sitting on the porch, pipe clenched between his teeth, watching me without expression. "You see it, don't you?" he said quietly. I nodded. He tapped the bowl of his pipe against the rail and sighed a dry, hollow sound. "It always tries more after dark," he muttered. "Always." "What's inside?" I asked before I could stop myself. He looked at me for a long time, eyes as hard and dark as flint. "Not something meant for walking under God's sky," he said finally. "That's all you need to know." He stood up then, slow and heavy, as if the years themselves weighed him down. "And don't go looking at it too long," he added over his shoulder as he shuffled inside. "It looks back." The day dragged by like a slow fever. The sky stayed overcast, the light never quite reaching full strength. Everything felt dim, muted, like the world itself was holding its breath. I tried to distract myself. Walked the perimeter of the property. Helped Riley's grandmother with small chores. Pretended everything was fine. But every so often, I found my gaze pulled unwilling, magnetic back to that ancient well. And every time I looked, I could swear it was closer. Just a few inches maybe. But closer. That night, sleep refused to come. Riley drifted off easily, exhausted from the day. But I lay awake, staring at the cracked ceiling, counting the seconds between each groan of the old house. And then, the humming began. It started faint, almost soft enough to ignore a low, tuneless vibration, like someone humming a lullaby they had long since forgotten the words to. It came from the backyard. From the well. I sat up, muscles locked tight. The humming grew louder, pulsing against the walls, threading into the floorboards, vibrating inside my own ribs. It wasn't natural. It wasn't human. Slowly, stupidly, I slid out of bed and moved to the window. I peered out into the night. The well was open. The lid lay half tilted, chains undone, hanging uselessly from the stone rim. And something was crawling out. It was pale, deathly pale and naked, its skin stretched too tightly over unnatural bones. It moved on all fours, dragging itself across the ground with jerky, insect-like motions. Its head twisted too far to one side, as if the bones in its neck were rubber. Its mouth was open in a slack, soundless gasp. It didn't see me yet. It was moving toward the house. Toward my window. My legs refused to move. My voice strangled in my throat. All I could do was stand there, watching as it dragged itself closer, closer, closer. Its arms were too long. Its fingers not fingers anymore but sharp, bone-like talons dug into the dirt as it hauled itself forward. And its eyes, when they caught the moonlight, were not eyes at all. Just two empty pits. Hollow. Hungry. Waiting. I don't know how long I stood there at the window, frozen, breathing so shallowly it hurt. The thing moved slowly but with terrible purpose, not mindless like a raccoon or some sick animal. No, it knew where it was going. It was looking for something. For someone. Its limbs jerked and spasmed with each movement, like a puppet being yanked by invisible strings. Every time its hand or whatever those twisted things were touched the ground, it left long gouges in the dirt. When it reached the base of the porch, it paused. Its head too narrow, too long, lifted toward the window where I stood. Even across the distance, even through the glass, I felt its gaze. It didn't have eyes, and yet, it saw me. A whimper escaped my throat. I stumbled backward, bumping into the bedpost with a thud that jolted Riley awake. "What's wrong?" she mumbled, half asleep. I couldn't answer. Couldn't find the words. I just pointed toward the window with a shaking hand. She sat up, blinking groggily, then crawled across the bed to look. For a second, blessed, horrifying second, she didn't see anything. And then the porch light, rigged to a motion sensor, flicked on. The thing was standing at the bottom of the steps now, fully illuminated. It wasn't crawling anymore. It stood upright, swaying slightly, like a drunk, its arms dangling almost to its knees. The skin across its chest and ribs was paper thin, stretched so tightly I could count every bone. Its mouth hung open, a dark, gaping wound, and from deep inside, I heard it. The humming. Low. Wet. Inside my head. Riley gasped, slapping her hand over her mouth. "What is that?" she whispered, but I grabbed her arm and yanked her back from the window. "We have to wake your grandparents," I said, my voice barely audible over the thunder of my heartbeat. She nodded, her face pale. We crept through the dark hallway, each floorboard shrieking louder than gunshots under our feet. Every step felt like an invitation for that thing to follow. When we reached the living room, we found her grandfather already standing by the front door, shotgun in hand. He didn't ask what was wrong. He already knew. "It's back," he said grimly. He peered through the curtain. "Get away from the windows. Both of you." We obeyed. I crouched behind the threadbare couch, clutching Riley's hand so tightly my fingers went numb. Her grandmother sat stiffly in the rocking chair, clutching a silver cross so hard that her knuckles turned white. The humming outside grew louder. It circled the house, slow, deliberate, the sound swelling and ebbing like a tide of sickness. Scratches whispered along the siding. Fingernails. Claws. Whatever they were, they scraped and dragged along the wood, searching for a way inside. The front doorknob rattled once. Twice. A low, broken moan seeped through the keyhole, not words exactly, but something older, more primal. Then silence. Dead, aching silence. I didn't dare breathe. Seconds stretched into minutes. Minutes into eternity. Finally, her grandfather lowered the shotgun. "It's gone," he muttered, though he didn't sound convinced. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. The rest of the night passed without sleep. Riley and I huddled on the living room floor, wrapped in a threadbare quilt, staring at the door. Listening. Waiting. The humming never truly faded. It was still there, low, distant, vibrating through the floorboards like the slow heartbeat of some enormous creature just beneath us. When dawn finally crept through the thin curtains, painting the world in cold, gray light, I allowed myself to stand. Outside, the porch light hung broken, wires dangling like entrails. Deep, jagged scratch marks ran across the door, the walls, the windows. Something had tried to tear its way in. Something had wanted us. At breakfast, no one spoke about it. We ate in silence dry toast, bitter coffee, fear thick enough to choke on. Afterward, her grandfather motioned for me to follow him onto the porch. He sat heavily on the steps, shotgun across his knees. "You want to know what it is?" he said, his voice rough. I nodded, though every instinct screamed for me to refuse. He spat into the dirt and stared off toward the well. "It's not a man," he said. "Never was." He lit a cigarette with trembling hands. "Long time ago, way before my daddy's time, folks around here made a mistake. They found something buried in the woods. A hole that went down too far. Too dark. Too old. And they tried to wall it up. Tried to pretend it wasn't there." He shook his head. "But it doesn't stay shut. Never has." I swallowed hard. "What does it want?" He looked at me, then really looked, and for a moment I saw something raw in his eyes. "Pity. It wants to be remembered," he said simply. "It wants to be seen." He stood, grunting, and walked back inside without another word, leaving me there, alone, with the well, and the terrible, growing certainty that whatever had come out last night wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. The rest of that morning passed in a daze. Riley tried to act normal, making the bed, helping her grandmother with dishes, humming tunelessly under her breath like she always did when she was nervous. But nothing was normal anymore. The house felt different. Heavier. Like something unseen had seeped into the walls during the night and was now sitting silently, waiting. And outside, across the dry and brittle grass, the well sat in plain view, as if daring us to forget it. I couldn't. Not after what I'd seen crawling from its mouth. Not after the scratches that marked the doors and windows. Not after the humming that still echoed faintly in my skull like a song I couldn't unhear. Near noon, her grandfather called me again. This time he led me to a small shed tucked behind the house. Inside, it was cool and musty, filled with old tools, broken furniture, and a battered trunk secured with a rusted padlock. He fished a heavy key from around his neck and unlocked it. "You need to see," he said, flipping the lid open. Inside were bundles of old papers, maps, black and white photographs, hand-drawn diagrams of the property. He pulled out a yellowed folder and handed it to me. I opened it carefully. The first page was a charcoal sketch, rough, frantic lines showing a pit yawning open in the earth, with shapes moving inside it. Not human shapes. Not animal either. Something wrong. Something ancient. Underneath, a handwritten note in faded ink. "The mouth that hungers. Do not listen. Do not gaze. Do not answer." "What is this?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. He took a long drag from his cigarette, the ember flaring bright in the dimness. "My great-granddaddy was part of the first group to find it," he said. "They thought it was just a sinkhole at first. Till they lowered a rope down and never hit bottom." He exhaled smoke in a long, thin stream. "They heard things. Voices. Promises." I flipped through the folder, more sketches, more desperate notes. One depicted a figure standing at the edge of the well, arms outstretched, as if worshipping whatever lay below. Another showed a map, the well circled in angry red ink, with jagged arrows pointing outward, as if warning of contamination spreading. "They tried to fill it," he continued. "Tried to bury it under stone, under salt, under prayers." He gave a bitter laugh. "But it always found a way back." I sat down hard on an old crate, feeling the weight of the truth crush my ribs. "Why stay?" I asked. "Why not leave? Move far away?" He shook his head slowly. "You don't understand," he said. "It's not the land that's cursed. It's the people." He tapped his chest with 2 fingers. "It marks you. Once you see it, once it sees you, you carry it with you. Everywhere." He leaned closer, voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "That's why we lock it. That's why we pray it sleeps." He grabbed my arm, his grip surprisingly strong for someone so frail. "But sometimes it wakes. And when it does, it remembers." The rest of the afternoon, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every shadow stretched too long. Every creak of the floor seemed to echo louder. Even the trees outside seemed to lean in, their barren fingers scraping against the window panes. The well sat silent, patient. But somehow, I knew that it was only biding its time. That night, we tried to act normal. Riley and I sat in the living room, half watching a flickering old television that kept losing signal. Her grandfather sat in his rocker, the shotgun leaning nearby. The fireplace burned low and steady. Outside, the wind moaned across the fields. And somewhere, under the earth, something hummed. Waiting. Around 2 in the morning, the dog in old mud that had barely moved all day began growling low in his throat. The hairs on the back of my neck prickled. I muted the TV. Silence crashed over us like a wave. Then the sound. Scratching. At the back door. Slow. Deliberate. Not the frantic clawing of an animal. The steady, purposeful scrape of nails against wood. Riley clutched my arm, her face bloodless. Her grandfather stood slowly, shotgun in hand, and walked to the door. He didn't open it. He didn't even touch the handle. He simply placed his palm flat against the wood and closed his eyes. The scratching stopped. But something heavier pressed against the other side, a presence that made the air itself grow thick and sour. He turned back to us, his face grim. "It's not trying to break in," he said softly. "It's waiting for someone to open the door willingly." We stayed there until dawn. No one slept. No one spoke. Only the low crackle of the fire and the faint, dreadful sound of humming kept us company through the endless night. By morning, the marks were back. Deep gouges raked across the door. Across the window frames. Across the walls. And this time, there were words scratched into the paint. "Come down. We are waiting." It wasn't over. It was just beginning. I left Shiloh Grove the next morning. I packed in silence, barely glancing at Riley, barely hearing her murmured protests. Her grandfather simply stood on the porch, arms crossed, watching with eyes like stone. He didn't try to stop me. He knew it was useless. Before I climbed into my car, he pressed a folded piece of paper into my hand. 4 words, written in a tight, shaking hand. "Don't talk about it." Below, almost as an afterthought. "It listens." I nodded mutely and drove away, tires kicking up dust and brittle leaves. The house grew smaller in my rearview mirror, swallowed by trees. The well, though. The well stayed clear in my mind, vivid and sharp, like it was burned into the backs of my eyelids. The drive back was uneventful at first. Miles of empty fields and sagging telephone wires under a bruised gray sky. It wasn't until I crossed the county line that things started to go wrong. The radio cut out, not static, just a low, heavy hum that filled the car like fog. The GPS blinked wildly before resetting to a blank green map. I tried not to panic. I told myself it was just the back roads, just spotty reception. But in my gut, I knew. The humming wasn't technology. It wasn't interference. It was following me. That night, back in my apartment 2 states away, I tried to settle into normalcy. Tried to wash off the grime of Shiloh Grove with long showers and bright lights and loud music. Tried to convince myself it was over. I almost succeeded. Until the first night the humming came back. It started just past midnight, low and soft at first, barely distinguishable from the hum of my refrigerator or the distant traffic. But it grew louder. Closer. Centered. I muted the TV. Sat in the dim light of the living room, heart hammering. The humming wasn't coming from outside. It was inside the apartment. Inside the walls. Inside me. I grabbed my phone instinctively, fumbling for any connection to the outside world. As I unlocked the screen, I froze. There, open on my phone, was the camera app. And in the gallery, a new photo, one I hadn't taken. A grainy, crooked image of myself sitting on the couch. From across the room. From a height far too low for any normal human. As if taken from the floor. From something crawling. My hands shook as I deleted the photo. But another appeared moments later. And another. I turned every light on in the apartment, every TV, every radio. Noise. Light. Anything to push it back. But the humming never stopped. It just changed, adapting, weaving itself into the sounds around me. It became the static on the TV. The buzz of the light bulbs. The faint whine of the pipes. It was everywhere. It was inside everything. Including me. I lasted 3 nights like that. 3 nights of broken sleep, waking to new scratches across my door frames, faint bloody handprints smeared across the windows, photos appearing in my gallery closer each time. Always closer. The final night, I dreamed of the well. But not the well in Shiloh Grove. No. This one was under my bed. A yawning pit, damp and breathing, stone slick with old, rotten moisture. I dreamed I was climbing down into it, my hands bloodied from the climb, my fingernails torn, the dark swallowing me whole. And as I descended, I saw it waiting below. The thing from the porch. The thing with no eyes. The thing that hummed and hummed and hummed. It opened its mouth wider, wider, until the darkness itself poured out and devoured me. I woke up screaming. And then I heard it. Not humming. Not scratching. Something worse. A voice. Right outside the bedroom door. Whispering. Come down. We are waiting. I didn't open the door. I couldn't. I simply sat there in bed, clutching the sheet to my chest like a child, waiting for the sun to rise. When it did, the voice was gone. But the message was not. Scratched into the wood of my bedroom door, in long, deep gouges, were the same words. Over and over. Layered and layered until the wood almost gave way. Come down. Come down. Come down. I moved out the next day. Abandoned the apartment. Left the state. I thought maybe, just maybe, I could outrun it. But you can't outrun something that lives in the cracks between the world you know and the world you refuse to believe in. You can't outrun a memory. You can't outrun yourself. I hear it now, sometimes, even across the country. When the nights are too quiet. When the lights flicker just a little too long. The humming. Soft. Persistent. Patient. It's waiting. It always waits. And it never, ever forgets. I tried to rebuild my life. New town. New apartment. New name on the mailbox. I stopped answering phone calls from Riley. Stopped checking the news for stories from Alabama. Stopped telling myself that what happened was a dream. Because it wasn't. It followed me. It changed me. And no matter how far I ran, how deep I buried the memories, I could never quite outrun the hum that lived in the corners of every silent room. The well began appearing in my dreams again. At first, it was faint, a glimpse through fog, a whisper in the dark. But slowly, steadily, it became clearer. The stones, slick with black moss. The chains, snapped and rusted. The hole, gaping wide, breathing. Calling. Every night it grew closer. Every night I woke drenched in sweat, heart clawing against my ribs. And then, the dreams bled into waking life. One evening, while walking home from the store, I caught it out of the corner of my eye. A shape. In an empty lot between two buildings that hadn't existed the day before. A well. Cracked stones. Broken chain. An open mouth staring straight at me. I blinked and it was gone. But the humming remained vibrating through the solace of my shoes, humming up my spine, rattling loose the last threads of my sanity. I stopped sleeping. Stopped eating. Stopped pretending. Neighbors started whispering when they saw me hollow-eyed, jumpy, muttering to myself. I didn't care. How could I explain to them that I was being stalked by something no one else could see? By something that lived in empty lots and abandoned alleys and shadowed stairwells? By something that waited, patient and hungry, just beyond the reach of light? The final night came quietly. No thunder. No screams. Just a soft, persistent humming that threaded its way through the cracks around my windows, under the door, into my ears and bones and heart. I knew, even before I opened my eyes, that it was here. That it had finally found me. I rose from the bed mechanically, as if strings were attached to my limbs. The apartment was different, stretched, wrong, like a funhouse mirror image of itself. The door to my bedroom no longer led to the hallway. It led outside. Into darkness. And there, under a sky with no stars, stood the well. Waiting. The stones gleamed wetly in the darkness. The chain slithered across the ground like a dying snake. The mouth gaped wider than ever before, impossibly deep, impossibly black. And from its depths came the humming, louder now, clearer, almost melodic. It wasn't threatening anymore. It was welcoming. An invitation. I stepped forward, barefoot, the ground cold and damp beneath my feet. The well pulsed, breathing in time with my own ragged breaths. Something waited at the bottom. Something that had worn my dreams like clothes, my memories like masks. Something that had waited years, maybe centuries, for another to answer its call. I stood at the edge, toes curling over the lip of the stones. The darkness licked at my skin, whispering promises. You are ours. You always were. Come down. I took one final look back. There was nothing behind me. No apartment. No city. No sky. Only the well. Only the endless dark. And so I stepped forward. Into the void. Into its waiting arms. Somewhere far above or far below, I can't tell anymore. I can still hear the world. Faint. Muffled. Like sound through deep water. I hear the hum of streetlights. The distant wail of sirens. The laughter of children playing. But they are echoes now. Fading. Forgotten. I live here now. In the cracks. In the deep. In the endless hum that binds the worlds together. And sometimes, when the night is just right, when the shadows grow long and the wind carries old songs, I can reach out through the walls of the world and find someone like you. Someone who listens. Someone who looks too closely. Someone who answers the call. And when you hear the humming, that low, sweet vibration under your floorboards, threading through your dreams, know this. It's not your imagination. It's not the house settling. It's not the wind. It's me. Calling. Waiting. Inviting you to come down. Because the well never stops hungering. And now, neither do I.